High above the sea of corruption, Nausicaa pilots a glider through the dense fungal forest with Asbel. They fly through a large cavern in the forest before landing deep within the toxic landscape. Amid a heavy downpour of spores, Nausicaa finds a strong updraft. They take off again, ascending through the spore-filled air. After breaking through the forest canopy, they struggle to gain altitude due to their combined weight. Nausicaa dives to gain speed before circling to find a stronger wind. During their search, she spots the wreckage of a large Toromechian warship. Suddenly, a massive, heavily armed Dorok airship emerges from the debris. Asbel recognizes the ship, and it begins to pursue them. The Dorok vessel fires, and the resulting explosion forces them to land. On the ground, the huge Dorok airship looms over them as armored soldiers jump down and surround them. Asbel tries to speak peacefully to the soldiers, but they react with hostility. One soldier grabs Nausicaa, provoking a fight. Nausicaa breaks free and skillfully fights back. She and Asbel stand back to back, defending themselves against the crowd of Dorok warriors. Asbel struggles to breathe and communicate with their attackers, realizing they must be a tribe displaced by the Toromechian army. The fight is halted by the arrival of a small, cloaked priest. Nausicaa and Asbel cautiously watch as the priest approaches. The priest, an old, blind man, removes his own mask and gently touches Nausicaa's face. He senses that she is not an enemy and asks her to forgive his tribe's aggression, inviting her and Asbel to be their guests. Though Nausicaa believes they are being taken prisoner, she agrees. They are escorted onto the Dorok airship, which Nausicaa is surprised to find is made of wood. Once inside, they are separated. A young guide leads Nausicaa through the ship, telling her that the soldier who attacked her was a bad man. The guide takes her to a large room filled with women and children, assuring her she will be safe. Nausicaa realizes the warship is functioning as a refugee vessel for displaced people. The story moves to a Toromechian encampment set up near acid lakes in the Rotwood. An officer named Kurotoa surveys the desolate area. A soldier reports that while there are no signs of life, there are marks from a ship landing in a nearby town. Kurotoa is wary, concerned that their plans might be discovered. He walks through the camp, which is filled with the carcasses of dead insects, and checks on the repairs being made to a damaged corvette airship. The repair crew shows great respect for Kurotoa, recognizing him as an experienced officer, unlike the arrogant aristocrats they are used to. Suddenly, a crowd of soldiers runs past. Kurotoa learns that troopers from the Valley of the Wind are causing a commotion because their princess, Nausicaa, has not returned. The valley vassal, Mito, passionately argues that she is still alive and they must go rescue her. An imperial guard refuses their request, accusing them of potentially deserting. The valley soldiers are outraged by the insult to their honor and the disregard for their princess's life. Kurotoa steps in to calm the situation, promising to ask for permission from Princess Kushana himself. Kushana agrees to speak with the vassal. Sensing Kushana has a hidden motive for her interest in the valley, Kurotoa does some snooping and discovers large, beaked creatures called Toriuma being kept inside a transport ship. Inside her quarters, Kushana interrogates Mito. She demands to know if Nausicaa is carrying a special stone that was taken from a crashed ship. Kushana offers to send a search party if Mito tells her the truth, but threatens to leave Nausicaa to die in the sea of corruption if he refuses. Mito cleverly avoids the question, suggesting that it would be better to rescue the princess first so the two of them can discuss the matter later.
Amused by his loyalty and cleverness, Kushana grants permission for the Valley soldiers to take their gunship on a rescue mission. Elsewhere, in a rocky part of the Sea of Corruption, Dorok warriors ambush a Toramekian patrol. The Toramekians are caught by surprise and quickly defeated. One last surviving soldier manages to fire a signal flare before being killed. Back at the encampment, the Valley of the Wind gunship takes off just as Kurotoa spots the distant flare. The Dorok attack on the encampment begins. An infiltrator delivers poisoned wine to a guard post, killing the soldiers there. A soldier discovers the bodies and tries to sound the alarm, but is struck down as fierce Dorok warriors charge into the camp. The story shifts to the sky, where a large Dorok air monitor travels through the clouds. Inside, in a room filled with refugees, Nausicaa sits by a window. Elsewhere in the sky, the gunship from the Valley of the Wind flies over a vast forest, searching for her. The pilots are confident that their princess is alive and waiting for them. Aboard the Dorok ship, Nausicaa's fox squirrel companion Teto plays with the refugee children, bringing a moment of joy to the cramped quarters. An elderly woman gives Nausicaa a beautiful embroidered dress that belonged to her daughter. Nausicaa's guide, a young woman named Ketcha, explains that the old woman's daughter was killed by Toramekian soldiers. Ketcha tells Nausicaa that their small country was destroyed by the Toramekian army, and now the survivors are refugees fighting back. From a porthole, Nausicaa sees a fleet of Dorok ships flying in formation, realizing with concern that they must be heading toward the Toramekian encampment. Ketcha leads Nausicaa to the chamber of the tribe's priest, who is called the Holy One. Inside, Nausicaa is surprised to be reunited with Asbel. The cloaked and masked Holy One communicates with Nausicaa telepathically. He tells her that a traitor within the Toramekian royal family informed the Doroks of Princess Kushana's plans. He explains that the Dorok tribes were sent by their holy emperor to stop the Toramekian army. Nausicaa is distressed by the thought of the inevitable bloodshed. Asbel speaks to the Holy One, arguing that the smaller states fighting for Toramekia, like his own, do so against their will and should not enemies with the Dorok people. A senior Dorok warrior suggests he can defeat Kushana's army and convince the other forces to withdraw. However, Asbel realizes the Doroks have a darker motive. After defeating Kushana, they plan to invade and colonize the lands of the periphery states, which is why they have brought their women and children with them. The revelation shocks Nausicaa, who understands that even her peaceful valley could become a battlefield. Asbel insists their only hope is to stop fighting each other and unite against their common enemy, the Vai Emperor. Inspired, Nausicaa stands and begs the Holy One to let her go to the Toramekian camp to convince them to stop the foolish war. The Holy One sadly tells her that it is too late, as the fighting has already begun near the Acid Lakes. A Dorok warrior restrains Nausicaa as she struggles, pleading for a chance to prevent more violence. Inside a Dorok airship, Asbel runs down a corridor, followed by two small, childlike figures. The scene changes to the sky, where a fierce battle is underway. The gunship from the Valley of the Wind, while searching for Nausicaa, has encountered the Dorok battle fleet. A crewman expresses his frustration at finding a war instead of their princess. The pilot, Mito, decides they must fight to protect the Toramekian encampment below, believing it's what Nausicaa would do. The small but powerful gunship attacks the massive Dorok vessels. Aboard one of the Dorok airships, the priest Sharuka is alerted to the attack and brings Nausicaa with him to the bridge.
Looking through a ceiling hatch, Nausicaa is overjoyed when she recognizes the attacking gunship as the one from her home valley, piloted by Mito. Determined to stop the fighting, Nausicaa rushes to the bridge. When a warrior tries to stop her, she skillfully dodges him and leaps over his head. She takes the priest Sharuka hostage, holding her knife to his throat and demanding that his forces stand down immediately. Asbel arrives on the bridge, shocked by Nausicaa's actions. At her command, he reluctantly disarms a guard. Nausicaa then communicates telepathically with Sharuka, pleading with him to stop the battle. She argues that his life is too valuable to his people to be thrown away, and that the gunship could easily destroy his ship. Meanwhile, the Valley gunship dives for another attack run. Just as Mito prepares to fire on the lead Dorok ship, he sees it raise a white flag. He then notices a signal light flashing a message. He deciphers the signal and realizes with shock that it is from Princess Nausicaa. Mito maneuvers the gunship alongside the Dorok vessel, having received Nausicaa's message that she plans to escape on her glider, the Meve. On an open deck of the airship, Nausicaa prepares to leave with Asbel, but he refuses to go. He tells her that he will stay behind to reason with the Doroks and urges her to go convince the others to stop the war. Nausicaa leaps from her glider, leaving it to fly away as a decoy, and runs along the ship's exterior. Asbel turns to Sharuka to resume their discussion, but he is immediately surrounded and beaten by the Dorok soldiers. The story shifts to the sky inside a Toramekian gunship belonging to the Valley of the Wind. The crew prepares for a boarding action as the fish-like ship flies over the clouds. Nausicaa is lowered by a rope from her glider and lands safely in the gunship's cockpit, where Mito catches her. She immediately tells the crew to fly to the Toramekian encampment at top speed. The bird-like gunship banks and speeds off, towing Nausicaa's glider behind it. They fly low over a vast forest. A crewman reports they are close to the acid lakes. The pilot observes that the toxic rotwood forest is thinning out, with no sign of the enemy. And Mito adds that the miasma is getting weaker. Suddenly, Mito notices that Nausicaa is in distress. She feels a sharp pain and experiences a psychic vision, sensing that the air is filled with voices of hatred. She comes out of the vision, realizing the feeling is connected to the Omu, the giant insects of the forest. Mito is concerned as Nausicaa suddenly stands up and points ahead. Below them, a massive dust cloud rises from the landscape. They see a giant, multi-eyed Omu with glowing red eyes stampeding across the ground, enraged. The gunship flies alongside it. Nausicaa realizes with horror that it is not just one creature, but a whole herd of hundreds, all charging forward in a rage. She suspects this is the trap the Doroks had planned. Her thought is interrupted when the pilot spots something ahead, a small flying vehicle over an acid lake, towing an object. Mito identifies the pot-shaped craft as a Dorok flying jar, which is dragging a small insect-like creature. To their horror, they see it is a baby Omu that has been cruelly pierced with spears and stakes. Nausicaa understands the Doroks are torturing the baby to enrage the herd and lure them into attacking the encampment, using the Omu's devotion to each other as a weapon in their war. The Dorok pilot in the flying jar is suddenly struck by an unseen force, which throws the soldier backward. Aboard the gunship, the crew prepares to attack the Dorok craft, but Nausicaa stops them. She orders them to reel in her glider, Mev. She then tells the crew to warn the encampment to evacuate immediately or face destruction. At the Toramekian encampment, A surprise Dorok attack causes massive explosions, throwing soldiers and equipment into the air. The Toramekian soldiers establish a defensive line and return fire as the Doroks charge. Dorok suicide troops carrying explosives swarm a large transport barge, leading to fierce close-quarters combat. The Doroks focus their attack on the grounded Toramekian airships. Observing the chaos, Officer Kuratoa expresses his frustration. He and Princess Kushana analyze the battle. Kushana finds the Dorok's reckless daytime assault suspicious, noting that they are superb soldiers who would not fight this way without a good reason. She concludes that the attack must be a diversion for a larger hidden threat. To expose their true plan, Kushana decides to lead a cavalry charge into the battle herself. From a hidden vantage point, a Dorok commander notes Kushana's tactical skill, but reflects that she is unaware she has been betrayed by her own brothers. Kuratoa, meanwhile, focuses only on his own survival. The scene changes to a vast plain near an acid lake, where a massive herd of enraged giant omud insects is stampeding across the landscape. High above in the valley gunship, the crew watches in horror as Nausicaa flies her glider toward the chaos. The pilot, Mito, ignores their pleas to turn back, knowing he must fly straight to the encampment to deliver Nausicaa's warning. Nausicaa dives her glider, the Mev, toward the cause of the stampede. Flying low over the acid lake, Nausicaa finds a pot-shaped Dorok vehicle towing a small, tortured baby Omu as bait. The image displays a close-up of a white, round plastic cap, likely from a bottle or container. The cap has a slightly textured surface and a ridged side for grip. There is a small circular indentation or detail on its top surface. She skillfully pilots her glider and aims her pistol. Flying directly beneath the Dorok craft in its blind spot, she shoots and severs one of the ropes holding the baby Omu. The panicked Dorok crew try to fire on her as she circles for another pass. Nausicaa fires again, snapping the second rope. The Dorok pilot attempts to land the injured Omu on a small island in the lake. The baby Omu crashes onto the island, but one of the tow ropes becomes jammed, and the Dorok craft is unable to release it. The small creature's weight pulls the vehicle down, causing it to crash violently on top of the baby Omu. Nausicaa watches in shock from her glider as the wreckage smokes on the island. Nearby, another Dorok vessel explodes and sinks into the caustic water of the acid lake. Nausicaa lands her glider on the shore and walks through the debris. On the small island, she finds the baby Omu still alive but horribly wounded, pierced with stakes. She realizes with sorrow that the Doroks intentionally left it alive to prolong the herd's rage. She tries to comfort the suffering creature, but is helpless to save it or even end its pain. As she apologizes to the creature, dozens of glowing, golden tentacles emerge from its wounds and gently touch her outstretched hand. On a barren battlefield, a Toramekian commander leads a charge against Dorok forces. Princess Kushana observes the battle and suspects the Dorok's apparent retreat is a planned diversion. Her second-in-command, Kuratoa, spots something in the sky. The Valley of the Wind's gunship appears over the battlefield. Instead of joining the fight, it fires projectiles that explode harmlessly in front of the Toramekian lines. Kushana realizes this must be a warning and orders her troops to fall back. At a nearby encampment, the gunship's pilot, Mito, lands and delivers the warning. A huge stampede of enraged Omu is heading directly for them, confirming the Dorok attack was a trap. A chaotic evacuation begins. Mito reveals that Nausicaa is engaging the Doroks, and he left her behind on her own orders. He expresses grave concern that her gentle nature will be her undoing. Elsewhere, Nausicaa is seen alone in the wasteland, armed with a large rifle and preparing for conflict. The Toromechian retreat quickly turns into a desperate panic. Kurotoa understands that Kushana's fears of a larger trap have come true. The massive Omu herd appears on the horizon, stampeding toward the army. Kushana realizes the gunship was trying to warn them, as more herds appear, surrounding her forces from all sides. The organized withdrawal collapses into a rout as soldiers scramble for the transport ships. Kushana tries to maintain order, urging her men to save the wounded. At one ship, a mob of terrified soldiers tries to board, but is held back by Kurotoa, who says the ship is waiting for the princess. As the desperate soldiers attack, shots are fired. Following orders from the cockpit, the ship takes off, its engine blast throwing the soldiers left behind to the ground. From the airborne ship, Kurotoa shouts an order. On the ground below, Kushana is shot off her mount by an unseen attacker from another ship. As she falls, Kurotoa lunges from the open ramp of his transport and catches her in mid-air, saving her just as the Omu overrun her position. The aircraft flies to safety with Kushana aboard. Below, the battlefield is completely overrun by the unstoppable stampede. The Toromechian army is annihilated as soldiers, vehicles, and aircraft are crushed by the giant insects. During the chaos, a soldier reveals that Princess Kushana was betrayed by her own brothers. The Omu herd leaves nothing but wreckage in its wake. Aboard a transport ship, the officer Kurotoa watches as the stampeding Omu pass through the destroyed Toromechian camp and continue onward. Elsewhere on the ship, Princess Kushana awakens and angrily confronts Kurotoa for his method of saving her. Taking command, she learns that her forces have been completely annihilated. Determined, Kushana orders Kurotoa to follow the Omu herd to learn how the Doroks are controlling them. As a solemn vow to her fallen soldiers, she cuts off her long braid of hair and lets it fall from the ship toward the battlefield below. The scene changes to a vast acid lake, where Nausicaa lies exhausted on a small island next to the horribly wounded baby Omu. Overcome with pity for the creature, she finds that she cannot bring herself to end its suffering. Instead, she embraces it, promising to stay by its side. The baby Omu begins to move toward the water, compelled by a powerful telepathic call from its herd to rise and return home. Nausicaa is dragged with the preacher to the shore, where she sees an immense herd of Omu gathered on the opposite side of the lake. From a Toromechian ship flying overhead, soldiers spot Nausicaa with the larva just as the herd begins to move. Nausicaa desperately tries to stop the larva from entering the corrosive water. She is dragged into the shallows, and the acid burns her leg and foot. She pulls herself onto the creature's back to escape the acid. The baby Omu stops and extends its glowing tentacles, which gently touch her wound, seemingly easing her pain. She receives a telepathic message from the creature, thanking her. Suddenly, the massive herd across the lake surges forward, attempting to cross the deadly water. Nausicaa watches in horror as the giant insects dissolve in the acid. As the survivors begin forming a bridge from the bodies of their fallen comrades, Nausicaa pleads with them to stop. She unleashes a powerful psychic cry, creating a brilliant flash of light that stops the herd's advance. Far away, aboard a massive Dorok landship, the psychic leader Lord Miralupa feels the force of Nausicaa's cry. Shaken by its power, he halts his army's advance and orders a small flying craft prepared to investigate. Back above the acid lake, Nausicaa takes off on her glider and approaches the Tarumachian airship. She expertly lands in its open cargo bay. Inside, Kushana orders Kurotoa to leave her alone with their new guest. Eavesdropping, Kurotoa learns Nausicaa is asking Kushana to use the ship to transport the wounded Omu larva. Kushana is initially enraged by the request, blaming the Omu for the death of her men. Nausicaa offers to share vital information about the Dorok's plans in exchange for her help. Kushana agrees on the condition that Nausicaa reveal the location of a secret stone. After discovering Kurotoa listening in, Kushana orders him to pilot the ship and land on the small island under Nausicaa's guidance. The story's location changes to the sky above a large acid lake. From the cockpit of the Tarumachian corvette, the pilot Kurotoa expresses disbelief at the plan to land on a tiny sandbar, calling it impossible. Nausicaa calmly tells him to follow her instructions, as she will guide him by reading the wind. She then climbs out of the cockpit and onto the aircraft's wing to better sense the air currents. As the corvette descends, Nausicaa calls out instructions from the wing. Kurotoa is terrified but amazed by her ability to perceive a layer of heavy air near the lake's surface that will help them land. The soldiers inside the ship's open bay hold on in fear. Nausicaa continues to give urgent commands from her position on the outside of the cockpit. The aircraft touches down hard on the island, its engines roaring as it reverses thrust. Nausicaa shouts a last-second warning to steer away from the wounded Omu larva on the sandbar. Inside, Princess Kushana helps turn the controls, and the ship skids to a jarring but safe stop. From high above, 2 gliders from Nausicaa's home circle the scene. On the sandbar, people work to pull the massive aircraft further onto the land, directed by Kurotoa. Kushana watches as Nausicaa calmly approaches the wounded insect larva. Kurotoa and another soldier look on in disbelief at her lack of fear. Nausicaa gently guides the creature as a crowd watches. The location changes to a desolate battlefield. A Dorok leader, the masked Holy One, arrives in a strange flying jar vehicle with a young female attendant. They observe the wreckage of an encampment where the Omu stampede destroyed not only the Tarumachians, but also the Dorok's own allies, the Beta tribe. The Holy One notes that the Omu are sacred and should not have been provoked. Moving to a rocky ridge, the attendant helps the small robed Holy One to the top. From there, they look out over a vast and endless sea of Omu. Back on the sandbar, Nausicaa pushes the wounded larva out of the corvette's cargo bay. She presents the creature to a small group of adult Omu that have gathered. From inside the corvette, Kushana watches with a stern expression. The giant Omu extend countless golden, glowing tentacles and gently envelop the wounded larva, lifting it from the ground. As a final gesture, one of the tentacles touches Nausicaa's forehead before the larva is taken back into the massive herd. Nausicaa stands her ground as the herd approaches, and their golden feelers rustle towards her. The tentacles gently wrap around her legs and lift her into the air. The Omu raise her high above the herd, holding her before the giant, multi-eyed face of one of the creatures. She is filled with a sense of awe. Standing on a platform woven from the tentacles, she feels a soft light heal the acid burns on her feet. Aboard the corvette, Kushana is stunned by the sight. Ignoring her soldiers' warnings, she walks out of the ship and among the Omu. She looks up in wonder as shimmering particles of light begin to fall from the sky like snow, shed from the Omus's golden feelers. Nausicaa feels the pain from her burns fade away and tearfully thanks the creatures. Far away, the Dorok Holy One also begins to weep, overwhelmed by the powerful feelings of tenderness and friendship being broadcast by the Omu. Being blind, the Holy One asks the attendant, Ketcha, to describe the scene. Ketcha reports seeing a figure in a blue dress standing among what looks like a field of gold, realizing that Nausicaa is fulfilling an ancient Dorok prophecy about a savior. The great herd of Omu begins to move on, gently lowering Nausicaa back to the ground. They send her a final telepathic message, telling her to return to the north. When she asks them about the trouble in the southern forest, she also asks about the Dorok lands. They suddenly sever their mental connection. The story moves to the Valley of the Wind, where the villagers are busy with the harvest. Their peace is interrupted when they see a group of aircraft approaching through a canyon. They recognize their own gunship and cheer for the princess's return, but are shocked to see it followed by a large convoy of 4 Toromikian transport planes. A sense of alarm spreads as the villagers hurry toward the landing site. The huge transport planes land on a flat plain, kicking up dust. Mito, the princess's uncle, is in the gunship's cockpit, and the villagers rush to greet him, asking for Nausicaa. He is immediately confronted by angry chieftains of the allied tribes who demand to know where the princess is. Mito explains that Nausicaa is not with them. She stayed at the front with the remnants of Kushana's army. The men are furious, accusing Mito of abandoning her. Mito quiets them and reports that Nausicaa is advancing south with the Toromachians. He explains that the chieftains of the periphery have also arrived with wounded and starving soldiers, and he tells the villagers to prepare a greeting party to help them. 2 of the king's hooded attendants pull Mito aside and tell him that King Jill is dying. They say his mind is still clear, and Mito goes to give his report. The scene briefly changes to a coastline, showing the massive transport planes have landed on the beach. Back at the castle, villagers and the 5 periphery chieftains gather. The location changes to King Jill's bedroom, where the ailing king lies in bed. Mito reports to the king and the assembled chieftains. He recounts how Nausicaa and Kushana spoke alone for a long time. When the chieftains learn that Nausicaa chose to continue the mission alone, they are outraged, believing she is being held hostage because of the secret stone. Mito continues his story, explaining Nausicaa's reasoning. She told her men that she revealed the story of the stone to Kushana, and that the man who had it may now be dead. She insisted she had to go south, not under orders, but to investigate a terrible event she feels is about to happen. She questioned how the Doroks could have captured an Omu larva, something that should be impossible. Nausicaa explained that the Omu sense a coming slaughter and have closed their minds to her. She instructed her men to return to the valley, tell her father and Master Yupa that the Omu are on the move and that the valley needs its gunship for defense. She said her father would understand once he heard that she fears the Dai Kaisho. Back in the present, King Jil hears the word Dai Kaisho. The chieftains are confused by the term. The king's attendants send for the ancient matriarch to explain its meaning. The matriarch, who is over 100 years old, arrives to tell an old story. She explains that the Dai Kaisho is a time when the sea of corruption rises like a tidal wave, and it has happened 3 times before. The last one was 300 years ago, when the tribes of the periphery were united as the Kingdom of Eftel, a prosperous land with advanced technology. A civil war broke out, and warriors began hunting the Omu to make armor from their shells. This greed angered the forest. The Omu stampeded in a massive, unstoppable tide, destroying the cities of Eftal. After 20 days, the Omu finally died of starvation, their bodies littering the desert. Their corpses became food for toxic fungi, which grew and transformed the desert into a vast new sea of corruption. The few survivors of Eftal fell under the rule of the Toramekian Empire. The chieftains are stunned by the story. One laughs, saying he hopes the Daikaisho destroys both the Dorok and Toromekian invaders. The matriarch scolds him for being selfish. The chieftains decide they can no longer trust Toromekia and must band together to form a new alliance to face the Doroks. Mito's men worry that breaking the treaty will put Nausicaa's life in danger. The chieftains ask for King Jill's support. From his bed, the king agrees to join the alliance, but refuses to lend them the gunship. He says with his dying breaths that Nausicaa needs the ship for her work. His final command to Mito is to find Master Yupa to help Nausicaa. King Jill then dies, wondering if his daughter intends to protect the whole world by herself. The matriarch confirms the king is gone. The news of King Jill's death spreads through the castle, causing shock and sorrow. Mito walks out to a high cliff to be alone. He then finds a group of children crying in a stone room. He comforts them by passing on a message from Nausicaa, thanking them for the nuts they gathered for her. Mito has a flashback to a military camp at night. He went to Nausicaa's tent to see her. Inside, Nausicaa was sitting on a chair, wrapped in a blanket. Mito gave Nausicaa a small bag of supplies he had gathered for her journey, which she accepted with thanks. He then noticed a bandage on her arm and asked about it. Nausicaa reassured him that it was nothing serious and explained that a young man named Asbel had bandaged her wound with a piece of his own shirt. Seeing Mito's worried and angry expression, Nausicaa listened as he shared his concerns. Mito told her that her gentle nature might destroy her, and that he felt she was more concerned about the Omu than her own people. He grew more alarmed, warning her that she seemed to be getting too close to the world of the giant insects, which ancient stories said was a path from which no one returns. Nausicaa calmly interrupted him by showing him a blue dress given to her by an old Dorok woman. She had adapted it into flight gear and explained that it was stained with Omu blood but carried no unpleasant smell. She marveled at how she, a girl from the valley, was wearing a Dorok dress dyed by an Omu to depart on a Toramekian warship. She asked Mito to tie the cloth from Asbel's shirt back onto her arm as a bandage. As Mito did so, Nausicaa told him that she loves the Omu as the most noble creatures, but she also loves her people and the person who bandaged her just as much. She admitted that she was terrified when she first left the valley. Now, however, she felt no fear because a voice in her heart told her to keep moving forward. She felt as though many people were watching over and protecting her. She showed him a soft helmet she had made from the dress's leftover material. At that moment, Mito's companions arrived outside the tent, calling for the princess. They rushed in and gave Nausicaa gifts they had prepared for her, including leggings, repaired parts for her glider, and special gloves. The flashback moves to the next morning. Nausicaa led her horseclaw, Kai, up the ramp of a massive Toramekian transport plane. She looked back to thank her friends and shared a final heartfelt embrace with Mito and the others. As her glider was loaded onto the plane, Nausicaa rode Kai inside, waving a final farewell. The memory ends as the transport plane flies away through the clouds. Back in the present, Mito stands on a cliff in the Valley of the Wind, comforting the children who are sad about Nausicaa's departure. He tells them to be strong and protect the valley for her. He silently promises that he will find Master Yupa to help her. The story's location changes to the shores of the Ocean of Salt, a turbulent sea 200 leagues from the Valley of the Wind. The renowned swordsman, Master Yupa, is seen observing a distant mining town. The town is built into the wreckage of an immense ancient starship. For generations, the community has survived by mining the ship's super-hard ceramics. The town, located in the domain of Samo, is currently bustling due to the Toramekian war economy. Yupa enters an inn and asks the master of the house about finding passage on a ship. The greedy innmaster tells him that finding a ship heading to the Rotwood is very difficult, as most cargo is bound for Toramekia. Yupa pays the young inn-worker, Iha, with a rare glowing stone, which delights her. Yupa's attention is drawn to a ship outside, but the innmaster warns him that it is not a suitable vessel for respectable people. Suddenly, a group of menacing, goggle-wearing men, known as worm handlers, burst into the inn, causing Iha to scream and drop her serving tray. The innmaster angrily tells them to leave his establishment. Yupa is puzzled by the presence of worm handlers in this town. The men ask for wine, saying they have money to pay. One of them drops several sparkling octagonal coins on the floor. Yupa recognizes them as Dorok Imperiums, the currency of the Dorok people. The innmaster's attitude immediately changes upon seeing the valuable coins, and he obsequiously welcomes the worm handlers inside. The other patrons are disgusted by this. Later, the innmaster shows Yupa one of the coins, explaining that the gold is of better quality than Toramekian currency. The innmaster orders his frightened daughter, Iha, to take wine to the worm handlers. Seeing her fear, Yupa offers to take it for her, saying he wishes to ask the men some questions. He also takes some jerky for them, telling the innmaster his wine is overpriced for what the worm handlers are getting. As he leaves, Yupa advises Iha that it is not good to hate the worm handlers, as they are human too. Just then, a fight breaks out among the worm handlers. One is struck from behind, and another attacks his comrade with a sword. A third worm handler brutally intervenes, kicking his fallen comrades and yelling at them to return to their ship. The group retreats from the inn in a chaotic scene. Yupa asks the innmaster to care for his horseclaw and then swiftly leaves, his cloak billowing behind him, as Ithya watches with concern. The story moves to a junkyard on the outskirts of the mining town, where a strange insect-like aircraft rests among piles of scrap. Two worm handlers are squatting nearby. Master Yupa approaches them and offers them a pot of food. He asks if their ship is headed for the forest, seeking passage. The worm handlers tell him they are returning to their village soon, but do not offer him a ride. When Yupa asks to speak to their captain, he is stopped by several armed worm handlers who tell him to leave. Yupa walks away, but finds a hiding spot in the junkyard. He sees a Dorok soldier ordering the worm handlers as they work on their ship. Realizing he cannot get passage normally, Yupa waits for the ship to take off. As its engines roar to life, he runs towards it at incredible speed. He leaps high into the air and lands on the roof of the aircraft as it becomes airborne. Finding a hatch, Yupa climbs inside. He enters the cargo hold and is shocked to find large, transparent containers filled with liquid. Looking closer, he realizes they contain fragments of Omu eggshells. The location changes as the ship flies over a vast, toxic jungle known as the Sea of Corruption. It then emerges over a barren landscape. Yupa hides among the cargo as the crew pilots the ship. Soon, the ship approaches a massive Dorok flying fortress. Yupa overhears Dorok soldiers on the fortress discussing how an army led by Kushana was recently destroyed. The ship does not land at the fortress, but continues its journey. The location changes again as the aircraft flies towards a smoking volcano, eventually landing near a settlement built into the mountain. Yupa sneaks away from the ship and into the worm handler settlement. He watches as masked Dorok soldiers help unload the large containers. He thinks that the combination of Doroks and worm handlers is very strange and suspects something is wrong. At night, Yupa explores deeper into the settlement, navigating through caverns and gas vents. He eventually finds his way into a series of tunnels. Suddenly sensing danger, Yupa draws his sword. Hiding, he overhears people speaking the Dorok language. He listens to a secret meeting between Dorok officials and the leaders of the settlement. He learns that the Doroks plan to use an Omu in their war against Turamekia, a tactic that has already failed once and destroyed an entire tribe. A high-ranking priest dismisses the failure and insists the Omu are just insects to be used for their war. The worm handler leader then speaks, revealing that they have delivered the goods the Doroks ordered, explaining that they have spent a lot of time and effort raising it. Yupa is horrified by the implication that they have raised an Omu from birth for use as a weapon. As Yupa processes this, a small slug-like creature attacks him in the air duct where he is hiding. His presence is discovered, and the worm handlers raise an alarm, sealing the exits to trap him. They release more of the slug-like creatures into the vents to hunt him down. The creatures find Yupa and swarm him. Their combined weight causes the air duct to break, and Yupa falls into a massive, hidden chamber below. Yupa lands in a secret laboratory. He is stunned to see a giant tank containing a massive, budding Omu larva being artificially grown. Deep inside the underground settlement, Lord Yupa is cornered on a high ledge by a crowd of armed worm handlers. The Dorok monks supervising them order the men to take Yupa alive, believing he may be a spy. Yupa accuses the monks of evil for growing insects and using the worm handlers. The monks state that he has seen too much and will not be allowed to leave, ordering their men to capture him. The worm handler leader, Goa, recognizes the famous swordsman and haggles with the enraged monks over a price for his capture. After settling on a fee, Goa tells his men that fame and fortune await them if they can defeat Yupa, and they charge forward. The lone swordsman stands his ground as the worm handlers leap up to attack him. With blinding speed, Yupa parries their blows, shattering their weapons and effortlessly defeating the entire group in an instant. Goa and his men are shocked by his skill, as are the furious monks. Goa prepares a second, much larger group of his men, armed with long spears, planning to overwhelm Yupa with sheer numbers. Just before the attack begins, a warrior in dark armor calls for them to wait. He is identified as a member of the Mani tribe and tells the worm handlers they should be ashamed to fight one man in such a way. He asks the monks to let him handle Yupa himself, and they agree. The warrior, named Asbel, pushes through the crowd for a one-on-one duel. Near an opening to the snowy surface, the two swordsmen face each other. The duel begins in a flash of clashing steel. Yupa strikes Asbel's helmet, knocking it clean off and revealing the face of a determined young man. During the ensuing chaos, Asbel unexpectedly chooses to help Yupa fight the worm handlers. He tells Yupa his name is Asbel of Pejitai. As the battle rages near the giant culture tank, a monk and a worm handler are knocked into it, causing the massive container to burst. A torrent of liquid and debris washes over the cavern, destroying the Omu specimen inside and sweeping the soldiers away. Amid the panic, the monks shout for the Omu to be killed before it fully awakens. A broken pipe then erupts, filling the area with a thick cloud of steam. The worm handlers are thrown into disarray, allowing Yupa and Asbel to escape up a long staircase. Their flight leads them into a large transport cavern, where they are suddenly attacked by members of Asbel's own Mani tribe, who mistake them for enemies. Asbel is quickly overwhelmed and brought to the ground. A young Mani woman realizes their mistake and calls off the attack, leading them down a different passage. Once they are safe, the Mani tribe members explain that they had also been waiting for an opportunity to destroy the tank. They urge Yupa and Asbel to run with them. As they flee the worm handler's settlement, Lord Yupa and Asbel are ambushed by armored soldiers. A massive Dorok battleship appears overhead, commanded by Lord Miralupa, the brother of the Holy Emperor. It illuminates the area with searchlights and opens fire on the grounded gunship. Imperial soldiers descend from the battleship and secure the area, taking control from the local monks and worm handlers. When the worm handler leader argues with the monks over the damage, Miralupa uses powerful telekinesis to violently silence them, asserting his authority. Yupa warns Asbel to quiet his mind, as Miralupa can read thoughts. Yupa warns Asbel to quiet his mind, as Miralupa can read thoughts. From a cavern below, the Holy One engages Lord Miralupa in a psychic battle. Yupa explains that the Holy One is communicating directly to their hearts, beyond words. In this mental confrontation, the Holy One condemns the Dorok leaders for their warmongering, warning that by reviving forbidden arts they will cause a great cataclysm. Miralupa dismisses this as heresy. The Holy One then delivers a final message to his people, prophesying that a savior will come, a person in blue clothing who will lead them to a pure land. Far away, aboard a Torametian airship flying through the night, a young woman named Nausicaa is awakened by the powerful psychic message. She feels someone calling to her from a great distance. Miralupa demands the name of this prophesied savior, but the Holy One refuses to reveal it. To protect the secret, the Holy One fatally wounds himself with a psychic blade, shouting for his friends to flee. As Yupa creates a diversion by attacking the Dorok soldiers, the Holy One's body explodes in a blinding flash of light. Nausicaa feels the psychic shock of his death. Yupa pushes the grieving Ketcha into the gunship with Asbel and tells him to fly them out. Asbel struggles to start the old hand-cranked ship as Imperial soldiers open fire, shattering the cockpit. He finally gets the engines running, and the gunship blasts off, escaping into the sky. Miralupa orders his cannons to fire at the fleeing vessel. At the same time, he psychically senses Nausicaa and realizes she is the blue-clad one from the prophecy. In a spiritual space, Nausicaa connects with the Holy One's fading consciousness. Suddenly, Miralupa's dark, swirling psychic form attacks her. Protected by the Holy One's remaining energy, Nausicaa's spirit repels the assault, causing Miralupa to recoil in physical pain. The Dorok battleship continues its barrage, but Asbel manages to fly the damaged gunship out of the direct line of fire. The survivors know they are still being hunted. Miralupa, having seen Nausicaa's face in his vision, vows to defeat her in their next encounter. As dawn breaks, Nausicaa stands on the deck of her airship. She feels the lingering pain from the psychic attack and realizes the Holy One sacrificed himself to protect her. A broadcast announces that her Toramekian fleet is now entering Dorok territory.